Hi, I'm Kathryn Costa from TrueNorthArts.com and welcome to my video series called Collecting Pearls. It's where I share my soulful and creative practices. I absolutely love origin stories. Those are the stories where we hear about the people, the places, the events, the ideas and the inspiration that led up to something. And that something could be a novel, it could be a movie, a company, or a product. Well, I have such an origin story for you. It is about my newest stencil called the Four Gates Mandala Stencil. And some of you may already have this stencil. Well, I'm going to share with you what led up to creating this stencil. And I do believe when you hear this story, I think you'll agree with me that it was divinely inspired and its timing was divine as well. Now, what I love about working with the stencils that I've created is that it opens up that door to creative joy for people who don't believe that they're creative, who may be intimidated by the math involved, especially with a design like this that you have to get out and carefully measure. Well, that all gets taken away. But there's something special about working with creating art that I really want to bring to you and to as many people as possible, and that's creating as a spiritual practice. I'm going to share with you in this video what that looks like for me and how you can try that out for yourself. I'm also going to share with you the many ways that you can play with this stencil because there are lots of options. Love options. This story takes place about a year ago when I was invited to bring a weekend mandala program to the Dharmakaya Center for Wellbeing in the beautiful Catskill Mountains in New York. Now, when I go to set up a mandala program, I have so many different projects of which to choose from. And I like to work with a theme. So to help guide me with the theme, I took a look at what the Dharmakaya Center is all about, and I saw that it was rooted in Buddhism. Well, mandalas are also rooted in Buddhism. I'm like, okay, what is one word that you think of when you think of Buddhism? For me, that word is compassion. There we go. There's our theme. At the time, I had just released, a few months earlier, my first line of stencils, and those were my chakra stencils. Now, I had been working with the chakras and doing a deep dive about them. Those chakras are these main energy centers that run up along our spine. And what I was so impressed with is that once you start working with these energies within you, you really see how they impact all aspects of your life, your body, your mind, your emotions, and your spirit. So creating the chakra art was so much more than creating a pretty picture. It was also a way of connecting with the energies within us. Of all those energy centers, the one that really impressed me the most is the Heart Chakra. You see, when you look around at all of the wisdom traditions, the religious traditions, the spiritual traditions, at the center and at the heart of all of them is love. And that incredible healing power of love and compassion. So I thought, aha, opening night, we're going to open up our hearts using that stencil of the Heart Chakra and connect and learn about and really get into opening up that heart center. Great. Project number 1 down. All right, so project number 2 quickly came to mind, and that is the Torus Yantra. Pictured here, you see the Torus Yantra, which looks like it's a complicated design, but actually it's just made up of drawing circles of the same size over and over and over again. And when I show my students step by step how to do it, they delight in not only how fun it is to create this design, but it reminds them of, as kids, many of us had a spirograph and the delight of drawing circle and circle and watching these beautiful patterns emerge. Well, the reason why the Torus Yantra came to mind is because this pattern actually is a 2D map of the energetic pattern of our hearts. You see, the Heart Math Institute has been studying the heart and the electromagnetic patterns and the energy patterns from our hearts. They have found that when they compared that energy pattern when you're feeling sad or lonely or any number of feelings compared to those when you're feeling love, compassion, forgiveness, feeling filled up with gratitude, right? When your heart opens up, there is this electromagnetic field that gets measured as this pattern. You can see my hands coming out like this because it's coming from the heart and it's coming out all over us. They measure this and they call it your heart rate variability. And when you meet someone, we can pick up on that heart rate variability of another person. We're that sensitive where we can do that. You know, when you meet somebody and you feel like, wow, you really feel a connection with them, instant, like, I really like that person. Or you may feel somebody where you feel, you might feel like a little bit of disconnect there, a dissonance. Well, what's interesting is someone who has a high heart rate variability can actually help raise the heart rate variability of those around them. You probably notice it when somebody comes into a room and they're like full of high energy and it raises the energy across the board. Well, this is all seen and mapped here in the Torus Yantra, and we get to draw that. So that was an obvious second choice. But now, there is the third project, and I knew I wanted to do something different. For the third one, I have been admiring for many, many years the beautiful and intricate mandalas from the Buddhist and Hindu traditions. Let's take a look at these Buddhist ones. And you can see that there is this repeating square motif. You can see that there are these 4 gates, these 4 entry points that help lead in. This is actually a map that when you looked at it from a 3-dimensional, it shows the temple and various levels. It is filled with so many different symbols. And I happen to have had the pleasure of watching a documentary featuring His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who explained about this particular mandala called the Kalachakra. Now, we're not going to be creating the Kalachakra. Let me just let you know up front, I don't teach that. I am not trained in that. I couldn't even begin to show you how to do that. But it certainly was the inspiration for this third project. Also, as part of the inspiration, observing the Tibetan monks who have traveled around the US sharing their sand mandala practice. And you can see here that they build these beautiful mandalas, 1 grain of sand at a time. And they have these metal cones that are filled with colored sand. And they build the design 1 grain of sand at a time. That vibration is actually what is moving the grains of sand and filling that pattern. Now, as they're working on their mandala, they're doing so prayerfully with intentions for peace, unity, harmony for all living things. Now, going back to what I shared about the Heart Math Institute, what we find is that when we have our hearts opening up with these prayerful intentions, not only sends information, we're using our mind to say, hey, I'm going to set this intention, and then we fill our hearts and open up our hearts with it. That heart sends out that information energetically to everything around us. So those grains of sand end up getting energized by those positive intentions. So at the end of the week, when they ceremoniously sweep it up, sure, many of us see, oh wow, this is an example of and illustrates the temporality of everything, the impermanence of everything. But there's a bigger thing going on here. You see, when that's swept up and it's sent out into moving water, what is getting dispersed? Those prayerful intentions and the energy of it. That design has been energized. It's been energized by not only the monks who've been working on it, but the awe that all of the people who come and where they bring their own sense of prayerful wishes, their own sense of awe and beauty. That all gets added collectively to this, and it sends it out into the world. So this had me thinking, how can we bring the same prayerful intentions to our process? So I designed this stencil with the intention that it be used for us to cultivate self-compassion, to prepare us for stepping into the world with more compassion to offer. So let's take a closer look at that Four Gates Mandala Stencil and how you can work with it as a spiritual practice. Now, one of the first things you're going to notice with this design is that there's some gaps. Take, for example, that inner circle. You see that it isn't a completed circle. That's the nature of a stencil, to have those gaps. We call those bridges. And what you do is you trace the part of the stencil you want to use, and then you go back in and you draw in and fill in what I call cross the bridges. There are 4 gates, like I've talked about, inspired by that Kalachakra. And each one represents a different facet of the self. Each one presents us with a challenge that we have in this life, something for us to transcend, something for us to work through. The first gate, and I'm representing that one with the one at the top, is the element of air, which refers to the mind. So often when we sit down to create art and we are quieting that noise outside of us, it may be that the mind starts chattering. And in that chatter, it may be looping thoughts about your to-do list, the things that you've got coming up. You might be anxious about things. It may be that you're judging, you're criticizing, you are commenting on, narrating what's going on in this. Not sure, am I going to make bad art? I don't know. I mean, all that chit-chat, chit-chat, chit-chat. So that's the first gate. The first gate are your thoughts. And the invitation is for you to be that sacred observer and to observe those thoughts, to not feed those thoughts, to not encourage them, not to get attached to them, but to observe them, to open your heart, to send it love, to thank them. All right, thank the thoughts. Thank you for being here. All right, you brought that to my attention. Yeah, I love you. It sounds counterintuitive, but you give yourself love and you soften up. And all that nervousness, all that slows down. The second gate, the gate of water. That water refers to our emotional body. Some of those chit-chatty thoughts may trigger some emotions. It may be that a memory pops up. That triggers an emotion. Emotion may come out of nowhere. And those of us who've been experiencing a lot of grief, we know about that. Because all of a sudden it's like a light switch comes up and you don't know where it's coming from. Well, what do? We invite that sacred observer to come and sit with and be with as we fill in with color and pattern and be present and allow those emotions to be present, to be seen, to give it that loving kindness. The third gate represents the body, the physical realm. And here, you may be experiencing physical pain. You might have an illness. You may have some tension that you're carrying in your body. Here again, we bring that observer in. As with the other 3 gates, there may be something that you're ready to release. So, we don't force it. We just be present to it. Breathe into it. The breath throughout helps to soften, helps to create that spaciousness within that moment. All right? Then we come to the 4th gate, the gate of fire. The fire has to do with your individual spirit, that sense of who you are, your soul promise, your calling. It may be how you can bring your unique gifts and talents in service to the world. This is that creative element within each of us. Now, I say that we're creative and it triggers lots of people. And they're like, you're Kathryn, you're creative. I'm not. Well, I'm here to tell you that we are all born creative. We are creating our existence in every single moment. And the way you express yourself creatively may be very different than the way I do. But you are a creative being. It's your nature. And nurturing that creative spirit within you is part of that fire element. As with all of these gates, there may be an element of forgiveness that you need to give yourself in order to give yourself permission to let go or to open up to something new. Once you have worked through these 4 gates, it prepares you for stepping into the center, which is the 5th element. And when you step into that center, that is where you connect with your true self. That true self transcends your thoughts. You're not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. You're not your physical, your body. You're not your ego and what you think you are. When you fully step into that center, you will recognize your true nature as being transcendental and transcending all of these other 4 elements. And in that, you connect with your intuition, and you connect and you open up this portal right here, that crown chakra, opening you up to connecting with not only divine consciousness, but unity consciousness. When you fully step into this moment, you connect with all living beings. You recognize that you are one with everything. There is nothing that separates us. So that is my understanding of how you can work with this design to foster self-compassion, to prepare for compassion and serving others in a greater way. Fosters unity, harmony, and peace. Now, you have some other options here. I love options. You'll see that there are some borders, an inner border and an outer border. This stencil happens to be a pretty good size, and at the bottom there is some space. So I included some additional symbols that you can see here that you can add to the design. So I'm going to show you 4 different ways that I've used this stencil. There's so many more possibilities. But in this first one, you can see that I've got not only the 4 gates, but those 2 inner and outer borders. And at the center, I used the Om symbol. You can see here, I did a little diagram in the lower right so you can see which parts of the stencil I used. With this second example, you can see that I drew in little drawings to represent those 4 different elements of air, water, fire, and earth, and I drew in a lotus petal at the very center. In this example, I worked with both the Four Gates stencil and the Heart Chakra stencil. All of the central designs within those chakra stencils fit within inside this mandala, so you can bring it in and work with any of those individual chakras within the 4 gates. In this last example, we see a very different construction, and this one is inspired by the Inca cross that comes from the Peruvian design. At the center, you see the Ouroboros, that is the snake eating its tail. You also see that I traced and used the stencil guidelines a little bit differently to build this design. So there you have it, a look at that Four Gates Mandala stencil. What were the inspirations behind it, how I use it as a spiritual practice, and a few of the very many ways that you can use that stencil to express yourself creatively. I am so grateful for the folks over at the Dharmakaya Center for Wellbeing for inviting me to offer a mandala program there. As such, I wouldn't have had this stencil otherwise. I wanted it as a tool to make it easy for those guests who come to be able to quickly draw up a design, have some options, and spend more time focusing in on that spiritual practice, working with their positive intentions, and opening up their heart. That weekend is actually still on the books. It's coming up in a few weeks. Take a look at your calendar. August 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. I would love and just feel so honored to be able to share this experience with you. Now, if you're concerned about, hey, we're in this pandemic, I don't know if it's safe, let me reassure you that the Dharmakaya Center is a brand new facility. It only opened up just in July 2017. So it's this beautiful, pristine location, and they have this dedication for not only the cleanliness and keeping it healthy for all of us, but they have a love for beauty. Our group will be the only group in attendance there that weekend. This will be a small, intimate, and exclusive opportunity for you to be able to, in this time of uncertainty and stress, to get away, to breathe some fresh air, to connect with other kindred spirits, others who are drawn to mindfulness practices, who want to awaken your creativity. I have drawing boards for everyone, so when you arrive, you're going to get a drawing board. I've got my part of the schedule is set up so there is a lot of spaciousness within it. I mean, when you begin each of our program times, I'll start us off with a meditation, a soul journey guided meditation to awaken up that creativity. And then I will do a demo, get you started. And you can stay in that room. There'll be enough room for the tables to be spaced out. Or you can take your drawing board and your supplies and you can go and hang out in a different spot, either within the facility or outside. So know that there are options. I invite you to check out the Dharmakaya website to take a closer look at what their facility is like, as well as the thoughtful precautions that they're taking to make it a very healthy and safe place for us to gather. Take a look at dharmakayacenter.org and also visit my website, truenortharts.com, to take a look at that Four Gates Mandala Stencil. All of these links are located below this video if you're viewing this on YouTube. Thank you again, and I do hope that I've inspired you to pick up a creative practice as a spiritual practice. My name is Kathryn Costa from truenortharts.com.